Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. In this final tutorial for the Introduction to Lightroom series, we're going to be covering the adjustment brush. Probably one of my most used brushes when it comes to masking, or most used techniques, I should say. The amount of control you have over this brush is perfect for essentially masking out any part of your scene for adjustments. So I'm just going to show you really quickly how to use this tool. We're just going to come over here to the right side of our screen and click on our adjustment brush, or you can hit K on your keyboard and you'll notice a brush will pop up that you can make bigger or smaller with the scroll wheel on your mouse. And we're going to just hit show selected mask overlay so we can see what we're doing. We're just going to click, say, I'm just going to give you a scenario here. Say we have our photo and the screen's a little bit too exposed, and we want to just lower that so we can see what's going on the screen. We can use this adjustment brush, so we're just going to paint here, and actually perfect time to tell you about this feature. Hit Control Z, go back into our brush, and what we're going to do is scroll down here and hit Auto Mask. We talked about this briefly for the other two filters, but we're just going to hit Auto Mask, so Lightroom will essentially do its best, as you can see, to detect the edges here of the screen. So we're just going to go like this, and we're going to mask out the whole thing. I think what I'm going to do is reduce the feather, just because we need a harder edge. That looks a little better, and that will also help Lightroom detect the edges just a little bit better with a harder brush. So we're just going to come through here, and it's not going to be perfect. I definitely recommend when you're doing this stuff, you take your time and make sure that you do a proper selection. If you want to make like a line selection, you can hold shift and click somewhere else, and it'll essentially just make a big line. That's what I did at the bottom here, just to try and get this toolbar in one nice swoop right there. So we have our screen masked out. If you would like to say, you come up like this and you get like little dots like this, this is often a problem with the auto mask feature. I find that sometimes it gets confused and just randomly selects parts that you don't need, and it kind of makes this blotchy pattern. So you can just come over to your eraser, small brush, auto mask detected, because it works on the eraser too, and you can just push and pull at your mouse till you get what you need. Now with that done, we can just hit show selected mask overlay, and much like the other gradient tools, we can now make adjustments to the selected area. So for something like this, maybe I want to bring the exposure down, maybe bring up some highlights, dehaze it a little bit. So now you can see, if I just come down here to this little icon, we can turn off our brush adjustments, and you can see exactly what it has done. So super useful tool. Again, you've got your brush, you've got your A brush and your B brush. Essentially all this is the ability to customize your brush. So say A maybe has auto mask, maybe B doesn't have auto mask. Maybe we'll bring up so you can kind of like save two different presets. And we also have our range mask settings as well, which we can use. So if we click here, we've got our selection. We can show selected mask overlay. We can go to luminance, and we'll hit this, and of course we can adjust our mask using the range mask features, which we talked about heavily in the gradient filter and radio filter videos. So go and check those out if you want to learn a little bit more about the range mask feature. One of my favorite tools within the tools to further define my mask. So I'm just going to turn this off. We're going to go off, so we don't need range masking for something like this. And that is pretty much it for the brush. You can use it for other things also. Say you want to maybe add some sharpening here, you can just click. Oops, okay, that's not what we're trying to do. We'll just show mask selected. We're just going to zoom in, and maybe we want this part, maybe our eye, we want to sharpen maybe. That's often something you do with the features of the face. We can just come here and just do an overall sharpen to that specific area, the affected areas, or we can of course, make further adjustments to specific areas of our image. A good example, when I was editing this photo here, so it's currently not edited, but when I was editing it, I actually used this to completely mask out the red of the car, to edit the rest of the image how I liked, and then fine-tune the details and the color spectrum of this car to make it a really nice cherry red, using the hue and fine adjustment sliders, as well as a little bit of saturation. So for something like this, you'll have to be rather careful, because you'll notice that Lightroom will have a bit, make sure my A brush is selected, because B does not have our auto mask. This one here, Lightroom had a bit harder of a time just making sure that it got everything, but I'm not trying to move it. Go back, just like so. And then of course, show selected mask overlay, and you can just literally change the color of the car if you so desired. So lots of functionality with this tool. Great way to just fine-tune masking. And you'll find that as you edit, so big thing that I find, especially if you use presets, I use my own presets, but I still find that, sometimes there's a set of colors in the image where you maybe tweak one value and it will upset the balance on another. So you'll have to go in and just mask out that area and just manually change it to what you want. So as I was talking there, just briefly kind of went over this car. We got a green car, and we can kind of change it to whatever color we want. But that is essentially the gist of the adjustment brush. So in terms of which ones I use the most, I honestly use the adjustment brush for fine tuning and like changing specific colored areas. And like, it's not necessarily using one the most over the other. It's more using like which one you should use in a specific situation. So with the gradient filter, obviously you want to use the gradient filter for adding, some gradients and directing light. Like, you wouldn't want to use the adjustment brush. That just wouldn't really make sense. You could use the adjustment brush, but when there's an easier option, you might as well use the easier option. There's also the radial filter too, which you can use to direct light and whatnot. Or another thing that I use the radial filter to for like an image like this. So when I actually edited this image, we'll just throw a preset on here real quick. Add this, so you can kind of see with this image here, it's kind of dark here, so you can maybe use the radial filter, bring that over here, and then bring up our exposure of just that one little area. Now you can also do it with the brush tool, where you can just kind of paint in here. And since you have the brush tool, you can go a little bit further, maybe down the face here, and you can correct some of those shadows and just bring back some of the lightness. So great way to use it for portraits and whatnot, but you have multiple ways of essentially, I like this one warmer. You have multiple ways of control, and it's just a matter of using these on different images and just kind of learning yourself, because it's something you're going to have to figure out on your own, which scenario best calls for which type of masking tool. But again, the purpose of these videos is to give you guys the tools that you need to further your learning and start experimenting on when to use these tools. But guys, that is essentially it for the introduction to Lightroom. So again, real quick recap of what we went over. We went over our basic import, cropping, what all these tools meant. We went over what this histogram graph meant, different techniques for sorting files, as well as all the tools that you need on the right side here to better edit and, edit in the first place and better understand what you are doing to manipulate the colors on your screen. So we also quickly went over our snapshots feature, and of course we have our history and main navigation. But that is it for this video. I hope you guys learned something. I hope this series helped you out, and I really look forward to seeing what you create. So with that said, I'll catch you in the next one.